Hi, this video is on single-parent families. Let's talk about single-parent families. Let's offer what we call some demographics, some data on single-parent families. Most single-parent families in the United States are headed by females. Over 80% are. Okay. Of those families headed by females, 40% of them were created by divorce. 42% were created because the woman never married the father of a child. And about 16+% are cases where the woman is still married, but the father is not present and she's raising the children by herself. Only a few single-parent families were created because in this case, the husband died. It also should be noted that many single parents work. In fact, about 50% or more of all the single-parent families headed by women work. Now, single-parent families have a lot of issues. One of them has to do with dating. Think about it. Here's this person, they're a single parent, they have some children, and they're dating. And this complicates the dating process because when they're dating, they have to be thinking, one, do I take the date home at night to my house? Do I introduce the date to my children? If you get serious about the date, and this is a person you might want to marry, you also have to ask yourself, would this person make a good parent for my children? So you have the issue of dating. Single parent women have the issue of should they invite the male over to spend the night? Because that may be setting a bad example for their children. So they have these issues. They have issues of isolation. Sometimes single parent women, between taking care of the child, working, maybe trying to improve their education and get better job skills, don't have much time for anything except doing the single parent role. So it can be kind of stressful in that respect. One of the major problems we find in single parent families, especially those headed by women, is poverty. About 30% of all single parent families are at the poverty level. If we add in those single parent families headed by women who are just a little bit above the poverty level and not doing that well, I've seen some studies that say as high as 50%. So at least 30% of the single-parent families headed by women are at poverty, and maybe a lot more who are doing just a little bit better than poverty, but still not doing that well. So why does this occur? Why are so many single-parent families in poverty? Well, one reason is that we think single-parent families face discrimination, that we feel that maybe employers are reluctant to hire a single-parent a woman's a single parent, because maybe they think she'll miss work and she won't be able to be there all the time because she has to take care of her children since she has no husband at home to help out. We also find that many of these single parents don't have job skills. Many of these females are very young and they don't have the skills or the education to get a job that makes a lot of money, and that can hurt them as well. Plus, their job may be hampered by the fact that they have these multiple obligations that they have to, as I said before about discrimination, may have to miss work in order to take care of their children when they're sick or have problems at school or what have you. So you have all these complicating factors making life difficult for single parents that may contribute to a lot of these families being in poverty. Another major issue, we think, is lack of child support. We find that in many single parent families, the male is not paying child support in the full amount or not paying it in the full amount on time and what have you. And this raises an interesting question. Some sociologists have made the assertion that males today are irresponsible, that they're not owning up to their responsibilities as fathers and helping out these single parent moms out there that could use child support. Other sociologists have said, well, maybe that's not true. They said, look, maybe there's another explanation for why a lot of these guys are not paying more or not paying the full amount in child support. And I'll give you an example from my own life. I used to be an advisor to a club on campus, and the vice president of the club was a single parent. She had two boys. At that time, I think they were like 4 and 7. And I asked her one time, I said, look, how much does your ex-husband pay every month to help take care of the kids? And she goes, $50 per child. I go, wait a minute, $50 per child? You have 2 boys, you get $50 a month for each child? She goes, yeah. And I go, you need to get more money. This doesn't make sense. And then she said, I can't. And I said, why? She said, because her ex-husband was living at home with his parents. He was going to community college. And that on the weekends, he worked at Burger King. and he didn't really make that much money. And she said $50 a child or $100 a month was a big chunk of his take-home salary. In other words, he didn't have much money. And there is evidence that as males make more money, they will pay more in child support. So one of the reasons that a lot of these males may not be paying their full amount in child support is that they too lack job skills. They too lack jobs that pay enough money in order to fully help the female out in taking care of the children. Now, we do know from our research that if the family helps out, his family or the female's family helps out, this can be immensely powerful in helping her get out of poverty. We also know there are other important things. But in reading an article several years ago, I was surprised when the author of the article cited the number one thing that they said a single parent female could do to avoid falling into poverty or to help her get out of poverty. So here's a question. What is the single most important thing a single parent can do to either avoid falling in poverty or to help her get out of poverty? I'll tell you what my guess was. My guess was education. Get good job skills, learn these skills, be able to get a better job and make more money. And I thought that. According to this study, that was number two. The number one thing the female could do, guess what? Limit fertility. What does that mean? According to this study, they claim that if the single parent basically at that point in her life stopped having children, limited fertility, this was the most important thing she could do to avoid either falling into poverty or in terms of getting out of poverty. In other words, if she wants to get out of poverty, she's got to stop having more children. So limiting fertility can keep her from falling into poverty, and it can be an asset and help her get out of poverty. Now, why is that important? It should be obvious. The more children you have, the harder it is to study and get a job and do other things because you have all these children to take care of. If you have all these children to take care of, how much time do you have to study, to get job skills? How much time do you have to work when you're the only person taking care of these children? And of course, that adds to a lot more stress. So what they claimed was limiting fertility. So let's look again at single-parent families. Most are headed by females. Many of these families are in poverty. A third or more are in poverty. These poverties face a lot of challenges. And one of the major challenges that they face is poverty, and that's a problem partly because of discrimination, lack of job skills, maybe the difficulty of maintaining a job because of all the responsibilities, and lack of child support. And single-parent families, we have to admit, make up a sizable portion of all American families. Depending on who you read, 1/5 to 1/4 of all families in this country are single-parent families.